All right, good morning. Let's start with Lamrim Guru Yoga. From the heart of the savior of the 100 deities of the Shita on the peak of cloud resembling cloud of an extremely white fresh curd, King of Dhamma omniscient Losam Drakpa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me on lying throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme fill of merit from a mind of faith, please abide for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Your holy mind is the intelligence that understands the extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech, which is excellent explanations, is an inner ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renown. To you are meaningful to see, hear, and remember are prostrate. Pleasant drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, lights, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme field of Mary. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I've collected from beginning this time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the eight worldly concerns. Sever, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billion clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of Dhammakaya. Please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dhamma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigrated beings, and in particular may cause the essence of perfect, pure, Losam Drakpa's teaching to shine forever. Sa-shi-apu-ki Ju-shi-me-to Tam-ri-ra-bling-shi Ni-de-gen Bali Sangye-shindu Mi-te-o-wa Hi-do-ku-nam-da Shin-la-chu-pa-shu. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losam Drakpa, where the morality of eminently pure way of life was courageous in the extensive conduct of the son of the victorious one, and accomplished the yoga of two stages of sublime bliss and emptiness. Idang Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure father and sons, and combining into one enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows through the opening of the tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and the imprints without exception. My body become as pure and clear as crystal. So in page 13, we're going to do the 5-line mixima 3 times. Mimetse wete chen chen rezi, jeme kembe wambo jambe yan, dupu malu janse sanweda, kanjen kebe tsuge tsungapa, losandra pesha lasovade. Mimetse wete chen chen rezi, jeme kembe wambo jambe yan, dupu malu janse sanweda, kanjen kebe tsuge tsungapa, losandra pesha lasovade. Mimetse wete chen chen rezi, jeme kembe wambo jambe yan, dupu malu janse sanweda, kanjen kebe tsuge Tsongkhapa, Losandra Peshabla Sovade.
Sangye Chedan Tsoji Jonam La Janju Badu Dani Kapsu Chi Dagi Chinshi Gibe Tsono Drolam Penche Sangye Trupara Sho Sanji Chedan Tsoji Chonamla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyabsuchi Dagi Chushi Gibi Sonan Drolam Benje Sanji Drupara Sho Sanji Chedan Tsoji Chonamla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyabsuchi Dagi Chushi Gibi Sonan Drolam Benje Sanji Drupara Sho 강기 도전이 존에 따라 점지 방비체를 담비춘 된지 고동 제라 창제로 Good morning everyone. Namaste. 먼저 신규권을 또 채워 땡기권을 또 채워 무비권을 또 채워 쌈비권을 또 채워 사지 시난게 땡기권을 또 채워야 돼.
So we have been covering the presentation of actions and the results. We've looked at the presentation of the 10 parts of actions, and currently we're looking at the section that explains what makes a certain karma heavy or another karma light. So the section was divided into 4 points. We've covered the first one, explaining the strength of the action according to the field. This is to say, according to the recipient. And now we're going to look at the great strength of the action due to the support.
땡기고는 또 채워리스 라운디 베나타 땡기 차니 레게와 제바이나야 또 채는 쪽이와 야 땡기 차니 레 미기와 제바이나야 미기와 아니 디고 또 침부 싸게요 봐 어딘지지 송고도스라.
Now the great strength by way of the support means that according to the support, if we perform a virtuous action, that action can become very powerful. And similarly, by way of the support, if we perform a negativity, a non-virtuous action, it can become very heavy, very strong. This is what this presentation touches upon.
제가 땡기 차네레스 라운디 직땡 아니 직 포무기 예와서로지 미리기 예와서로지 딘디 숭기어 말레스 라 더 사물로 아니 직바 라 아니 더 땡 차니 케바 가른 로그레스 라운디 베나 베나 당아주 짬주 동바 슈바니 체니 아니 땡디 나미 땡리 다 규르고요레스 라 나마 피기 직 동바 맹행기 미진바나다 동발레니 체니 다 동비기 땡진진자 땡디 땡 케바와질이야 아니 규르고요레스 다 땡 케바와 디 톨아야 아니 내가 가르쳐 봐 있느냐 고 하르다 만데비 케바친 조샤임바디 땡기찬다 도스 드로그레스 어디 송고도 왔으라.
Now, when we look at strength by way of the support, you can just as well say strength by way of the basis. So in terms of the basis that we use for our practice, there's no difference in terms of gender. So whether you're a male or whether you're a female, there's no difference in terms of ethnicity. So in that sense, gender-wise, ethnicity-wise, the support, you could say, is the same. What makes a difference is once you go for refuge, and then having gone for refuge, you take upon yourself a vow, like for example, the refuge vow, then a certain transformation occurs in a sense that when you, for example, look at the support that you use for your practice prior to taking a vow and then having taken a vow, there is a certain transformation that occurs in that you attend this special basis, special support, so that whatever you do on that basis become different to how it used to be before.
어디를 딘자다 땡 케바와 제 마치세디 소주 락발에 요데기로 차그도스라 비기게다 동발레 말렌디야 소주 락발에 요로스 소주 라마 요로스 아니지 딘자다 domba len da malen di susul rawa yobanza domba len ni ta chi goba khari yome di tolaya and chi domba malen kon din ji tolaya pena genyi domba shugu yobananda ani chi getsolong domba shugu yobananda an chanju sim domba da sanga domba inde ta domba khanaj len yobana ya domba len ni chi pento khari yome di tes chi ani ngontreba chewaina ani domba len tsebi jelaya ani chi domba di yakbu chi son tuyagi chi tamja da mazun tembu sha tuyagi kyaba di tenden rogu yosa res.
So then in that sense, when we think of taking upon ourselves vow, taking upon ourselves vows is completely in our hands, in a sense that to create this special support is totally up to us. It's completely in our hands. We are free to take vows. We have the freedom to do it. This is completely in our hands. But then when you consider the taking of vows, you need to begin with in asking yourself, what is the purpose in doing it? What is the purpose in taking upon myself a vow? And we have different vows within the Buddhist tradition. Like, for example, to begin with, we have the set of vows of approaching virtue, what is called the refuge vow. So the vows of approaching virtue. Then ordination vow, either as a novice or as a fully ordained. Then we have the layer of the bodhisattva vows. So if you're going to take upon yourself those vows, you need to ask yourself, what's the purpose in doing that? What benefit do I get from taking upon myself those vows? And once you understand that, once you're introduced to the benefits of taking upon yourself vows, then you also need to then keep in mind that you need to guard them well. So once you understand the benefits in taking upon yourself the vows, the benefits or the purpose, then you also think that, therefore, I need to guard well the vows that I have, which means that you bring about that sense of stability in the vows that you have.
Odirejada bena dinza ani dakam galaya gashilaya chi pigige godin goba di shu chi toma tubaina ya same thing ni bena chi domba lenya ani gawa dindi yong chogores diko tian pacha sambuji ki top top res ro pacha sambuji top re inza ta bena getsulong ro dribaina getsulong ro dribaina chi o chi chawa ane so ro sebaina jinga chawa ane chen chi lamsang shuji be gyodro me on samsam ro shuji be lamsang be and chi mixe wa cha me on sam dindi rewa ro gyabni chebaina ani kala kha operes ro ngazu and le lawoji zawni ni yomaro ta ani pigleya kache dur shuji ten rogo gres ro tombo sonya dia pena ani nimachig mare ni mare and dawakashi mare kanji mashi warde ani sonya di tamje chigo gores o dichi di tsambala kali yona ya ani ngi chego samsongi samlo ji yobaina ani chi pigi get sulung ani cheba da machi wani cheba na bedi ani namsa tugres beze nalo sam tamaina ya pigi ta chi 미게 김마친 조야지다 아직 타와텔자 진 조이 쳐봐나 미친 나로이 바이나 미친 대성 담아나 미친 뒤답대봐 로 아니 개와 치마 남 상담도 텔리짱 디치디기 지 담카도 지여봐나 담카 약슈디 테레데이나야 된 레라고 지여 말했어 이 인지미 상담고도 왔으라.
So then, if we were to take upon ourselves vows, at times, since we are different to each other, at times for some people, even if they do not see for the time being the great purpose in taking upon yourself a vow, like, for example, an ordination vow, still in the mind, they might be very inclined to take upon yourself the vow. They would be happy or enthused about taking upon themselves the vow. So you could say that even if you don't see the purpose, even if you don't see clearly what the purpose is in taking upon yourself vows, if you find that you're really enthused about doing it, it is because of imprints that you have placed upon your mind stream from before, imprints of such vows. So for example, in relation to the vows that can be taken, you can become a monk or a nun, a novice or a fully ordained. So there's a great change that occurs in your life once you take ordination. So there's that great change or great transformation. And yet, if you think that now everything in my life is going to be much better, it's going to be very different, much better instantly, it's actually quite difficult for that to occur. If you hope for that great change or transformation, it's quite difficult. It is likely to not occur like that at all, because to bring about the great change or great transformation, we need to work hard and to also work with difficulties that we encounter. So when we take upon a self-ordination in terms of the vow, the promise that we make, the pledge that we make, it's not just for a day or two or a few days. It's not just for a few months, but the type of commitment, the promise that we make is for the rest of our life. So you need to think about it like that. You need to think that if I'm taking upon myself ordination, it's not going to be easy. There will be some challenges, there would be some struggle, but I will do it for the rest of my life. So if you then think about it like that, then you start to look at your time before ordination and time after ordination. And generally speaking, Geshe reckons that when you think of living your life as a layperson, living your life as a monastic, in some sense, you can say that your life is made more simple, more easier once you become monastic. So that affects this life, but also, needless to say, that when you might be living as a layperson, or you might be living as a monastic, and even if your kind of way of living as a monastic is not that great, even if you're not like the best monastic that can be found, still, not only it makes this lifetime more simple, but also it has great effect over future lifetimes. So the option is, we have the option to make our choices. We can choose what we want to do. We can think about it, but coming down, when you think about it, of course, it's not that easy.
어디래셔다 딩에 다가서 조셔도지 인스로티 아니 딱 만들로 춘종 딘디 가시 아니 지긴생이 가시 타와 지긴생이 딘디 연구여서 배 약보 소소도는 지수 이런 지기였어. 다 비기디 제자베 제려야 베나지 배절로니여서 제려야 로투바이나 아니 배 겐진 침부 요레스라 간스나 다 소소 메시지 지로니 체서 제려야 메시지 키와인자 안디기다 겐센 통니다 라구여러스 다 이나 옆에는 로니 체서 베나 타사도 지금 들어봐이나 아니 치 타사란 종디기 치 타사기 나로라 땡이 미참말로 아니 삐탁부 짠짠다 약부 짠짠 레베스나 안 사자 가로나 요 말이스티 소바 간다지 길은 들어봐이나 소바디 나로 독자 요리 약부 요리 드라마데 요리스 안다 약부 두소 통야 깔레카부 빼요레스 로 먼저 최치야디 직발이 약부디 잘라지는 약부디 라야 빼카부도스 벤 통야 깔레카부 요리다 독자디 람산 통거레스 람산 라기레스 소소레는 독자기 시가데 람산 코셔져 요 딘디 깔레야 가시가시 직 아니 가서 왔다 지 로도지 로체 안 딘디에 안 당분이니 아니 셈레야 차시샤니 드로바이나 아니 수즈미세나몰야 동네 체토야 개반적으로서 남기 자살이야 빼자온디 자살이 감소나시레스 감수기라야 소착 deddan di mesek di yesek kazu tsanchim karinan hat soba ingoras ro nobiring damada ingore dukjagring dam de nashingi yusen lagores o dindi roj samla shani ani drobaina ani pi tachi tasal dron pesha tebaina ani gishi tang tugres ro chigeni pendrongengi tawachingen tanda gishi tensengi mambu ingores kashipe 아니 캠보체 등이 가시 추조칼라야 추기체 등이 어딘데 연구어스로 디 베나다 지 로션션 짐바이나 메샹게 디 체기여나 제투고여나 소스체므도 인생 칸요 말았어 어딘디 셈레야 탐자샨 지 제바이나 아니 마웅발야 자자자담바 게리 지 콤시리 간지 토니 안지 롬바데발야 자자자담 펜도 제퉁인기 미센된 차야도 어딘지는 로고도 하스라
Now, Geshe said that having mentioned that is a bit, you can say that it's a bit branching out of the main presentation here, but Geshe is saying that because sometimes we come across young people that want to become monastics, either want to ordain as nuns or as monks. So it's a good thing. Geshe rejoices in the wish to become ordained, but you need to keep in mind that first of all, it's not easy. And also once you receive ordination, then you need to look at the purpose of your life. What are you going to do with your life? So one purpose in becoming a monastic is to spend your life training, studying. And particularly when we consider a background, we have been brought up in a certain education system. So we've developed habits with studying, and that's very good. That can be helpful also in terms of studying and training as a monastic. So should you decide to join one of the big monasteries, like for example, one of the big monasteries that you find in India, then you need to keep in mind that since those monasteries are big and they have a big community of monastics that live in those monasteries, it's not that everyone is going to be good. It's not that everything's going to be good. It's not that every person they're going to meet is going to be exceptional or going to be very good, because such thing does not exist. Whatever might be the community that you're going to live in, you're going to have good things and bad things. You're going to have positive people and people that will behave in a negative way. And as it happens, it's sometimes difficult to recognize the goodness in societies or the goodness in people. Something that is bad immediately sticks out. It becomes immediately visible. We can see that in wherever we live, whatever community we might be living in. You can see that it's sometimes difficult to recognize the goodness, whereas negativities, negative behavior and so forth is immediately visible. It completely sticks out. So you need to be prepared for that. You need to be realistic about it. So first off, you're going to think that I'm doing that so that I can transform my life. And I have to bear with all those different difficulties. Just like there's a saying in Tibetan that when you look at the great ocean, first of all, the great ocean has this great variety, great expanse of living beings, but also it contains also different materials, different substances, precious stones and so forth. So the variety and the richness is great. So you're going to see all sorts of things. And similarly, something applies to communities or societies. There's a great variety in societies. So then if you think about it like that, and you decide to join one of those big monasteries, then you join a study program. They're actually in Tsara monastery, for example, there are foreigners that study in that monastery. Some of them have become geshes. Some of them there are people even that became abbots. Some of them that have completed the studies and now living in Buddhist centers, giving teachings to others. So when you think about our ability to do it, particularly where kind of you're still young, then there's nothing that you cannot accomplish. There's nothing that you cannot do if you're doing it when you're still young. So when you decide to join a project such as this or community such as this, you think to yourself that this is a long-term plan. I'm developing new habits. I'm learning a language. I'm learning Buddhism and so forth, so that in the future, I'll be able to use whatever I study in order to benefit others. I can, for example, give benefit to the people in the place that I come from.
어디에 배나 체지로 직샤반 단단한조 라무소르지 쳐조비 잉nen라 슝이 계신남다 나들 로직 바레스라 이난 코란 타살이야 직동고지 고주 고구이나 지레스 해두디 용니다 비 타살이야 아니 카자친다 게겐치 댕이지 고라스 띵아인스라 아니 그진 데니 다 니도 줍든 줍기질이야 코란 게시텐지 단다 잉nen라야다 아니 추신 배야부여스로 어딘지도 레 로니슈 자루잡더니 아니 비기 타살슈 테네야 베타 고니 진테니 게시텐다 어딘디 용고르스 벤 라드 타살싱디 캠보디 아니 nushok res ro pe ya bu yarum ju pe ya bu zinang dos an koran chakbe kazus kari kanda yome de nga yume de ne ya wa dindi yoris tarwa kanji tu chechini da tamadele ya ji suzu longbale ya ro ani pendo che tu baina pe mas ba yakbu dos ro.
So, for example, one of the students of Kyabja Lama Sopa Rinpoche is Geshe Namdak. He now lives at, I think the Jamyang Center or Manjushri Center, Jamyang Center in London, as the resident teacher. So he joined Sera Monastery in 1999 and is the same age as Geshe. So normally when someone joins Sera Monastery or one of those 3 big monasteries, you need to find a responsible adult, in a sense that someone that will vouch for the new monk that comes along, right? So Geshe was the one that vouched for Geshe Namdak when he joined the monastery in 1999. So he stayed there for 26, 27 years. He did his studies, he graduated or he completed his studies. Just a second, Dila. Lo nisa truk nisa dun kupchko gu lo la shuwaina nitun chubdun chututen shuwaina lo chubdun chugu chutruk den dedwa. Nisa dun nisa trumarwa. Okay, anyway, yeah, anyway, so anyway, so he joined the monastery in 1999. He graduated from his study program in 1916 or 17, he finished his degree, and then he went to England and became the resident teacher at the center. Also, in another Tibetan settlement in Mongud, there's a monastery called Ratu, and the abbot of Ratu monastery is a monk from the US. So His Holiness is very happy with him. Geshe doesn't know that person personally, so Geshe doesn't know how much that person has studied, but the point is to say that if you make sure that things, if you join it from a young age and you progress in a good way, then you can see that also people that come from other background can do it. So whatever you study, whatever you train it, it could be very helpful to yourself and helpful to others.
다 간징아 지 다지 롱바디 난기 비기 다지 쉔기 부부모든지 다 베나다 지 톨럽도 참아 테메바이나 수수수 비기 깜바가라 랑투야기 벤주디 카브로스 인자 아니 지 롱바디 미기 안 딘디레야 로바치 투와이나 딘디레야 로바진 다 칠로기 밀레 베나 지 베베타바 아니 딘디레야 로브르부 딘디레야 로버지 등인데 노쇼버 빼 mambu어서 지수이랑로스 네 소수고 롬벤난기 지 비기 다 시행기 딘디 지 타와는 주야리야 니 자기한테 중국어 딘톤 딘디톨 로버지 와이나 다지 가서 산지 추 비기다 지 냠마부세 남도 아니 여살이야 펜도르그라 지수 빼 맞으면 펜도야고 여살 삼고도 쓰라.
Looking at a way of life here in this place, particularly when you're young. So we live at a place of society in which if you haven't graduated from university, from college or university, then you might find it hard in the future to care for yourself. So in Tibetan society, the way that it works is that monks and nuns are often supported by the community. Or also it's not uncommon for Tibetans, men and women, to have sponsors overseas, right? So if you're a monk or a nun, it's not uncommon for have sponsors overseas. So if you're sponsoring someone like that, then of course this is good. But also Geshe says that when you think about it, it's also good to help your own, in a sense that not only helping someone overseas, but actually if there's someone young age, want to become monastic, want to study and so forth, it's good also to consider helping someone like that. They might be of benefit to people living in this area in the future.
제 제가 어딘지로 답변나 추조기 내가 지금 주인 바이네야 안 추조라야 딩hin기 원이 지 잡아도 주마딘디 벤주고 돌아 강가 영이나 두줄레 믹스기 따도딘디 나한테와나 저 코딕지야마도 수수수 비 배사 땅고 말 코딕지야나 메샴바 로버치그레스 어딘지 진다 추조리 아니 겐딩기 데리 아니 간지 참을로야 라마 소름지 까공리 참을로야 펜로야 냉가지 책도 왔어요.
So in a place like that, for example, the Chenrezig Institute, where we have a monastic community, monks and nuns, then Geshe feels that we can find ways of supporting the community of monastics. Now, Geshe says that, of course, it's not to say that people that work at the center should now open the wallet and kind of give money to a monastic and so forth. It's more like, how do you create programs or pathways for monastics to be supported in a place like that? So it's good to think about it. Geshe reckons that it all fits with Lama Zopa Rinpoche's vision, with Lama Zopa Rinpoche's wishes. Anyway, sorry for that diversion. We had a little bit of, we were digressing a little bit. Let's go back to the text and pick up on the section that explains the great strength due to the support.
총야 띵든진라스라운데 다치 짝 춘중진바이나야 주간라 샤와나 주 띵라마 노브르고도스 대니든 뇌체바네 체야 띵도 총와 신도스 미케바단 키비치비 디바야 지와단 양월 송소.
So the great strength by way of the support says, just as even a tiny lump of iron sinks, whereas a container made from it floats, so likewise, the bad actions committed by unskillful people and skillful people are respectively heavy and light.
Rumbuchim Pumbin Dole Jan, Tonsum di Sumjan Tamji, teaching la Shudi, Korgi Jasi than Dembe, Jere Jam Marme, Jamsu Zam Nimbo, Rerab Zamji Marme, Sanji Chodan and Chobar Chive, Chansum Kimni Joy, Marme, Nimbo, Drumurjiko, Chotin Chuton Zimbi, Sonum Jai Chai, Mababa Sondi, then the Sambatang, Shin la Kemeji, Mobile like Kevashin Chivi, thank you to Salos.
In continuing with the reading, it said that for those who are skillful, who regret the previous bad actions, restrain themselves in the future, do not keep them secret and apply the virtue's antidote. They are light, whereas for those who arrogantly assume they are skillful and do not do this, but out of contempt deliberately engage in them, they are heavy. The Heap of Jewels Sutra also declares that if all the sentient beings of the billion universes were to have entered the Mahayana and gained the endowments of universal monarchs, and if each of them were to offer battle lamps in the vessels the size of an ocean, and with wicks the size of Mount Meru to a stupa of the Buddha, this would not match even 1/100th part of the merit of a bodhisattva who has left his home and who holds up a little bit of wick smeared with butter in front of a stupa. This makes clear that the strength of the support, even if there is no difference in the antidote in the field, and even if the thing offered is very different. So,
yeah. Tadima Chiglos, Chibadores, that D. Rigby Domba Yemetan, Yobalayan, Chigdan, Nidan, the Sumdingi, Tenki, Lam Gombayan, Hamangamale, Chimachima, Sajucheva, Sashen, Kimba Davi, Jinton so Chevitsia, Nini Davi, Domba de Dembitini Chebatan, Domba Meva Chebani, Geza, Top Chejon Chever, salo Tsultrim Tsultrim sar chava sarchibin dole megiwa chuda demi mishiki gyundu parchi cheb meba lo gyaya bardo digwa saba leye gelon Tsultrim chave tansong ki gyanzen ki yone tepe jimbala shakji lonchana megiwa chewa sombayan tengi gonu digwa chewa wos lon namje le gyang chagong mejin bawa da soban giwan choyin ki tsulcha yanda mindun bi yonkor sonyum saba min shiye tsulcha da labala loba nika sonso tenbi soni kyang Shela tembi digbi kamna megiwa chu digba junju yin sondi mambar nangosa.
And then it says this reasoning also makes clear that depending on whether one has the support of vows, and if so, whether it is 1, 2, or 3 sets of vows, the cultivation of the path will be the more effective the more one has. For example, there is a great difference in the strength of the roots of virtue according to whether a householder at a time of giving donations and the like acts on the basis of keeping vows, such as one-day vows, or whether he acts without any vows. The Overcoming Faulty Ethical Discipline Sutra says that compared to a human being possessing the 10 non-virtues who for 100 years continuously and uninterruptedly accumulates bad actions, a fully ordained monk who has completely broken his vows of discipline and who for one day dresses in the victory banner of sages, enjoys that which has been offered in faith to him, accumulates far more bad actions. Again, because of the support, the bad actions have greater strength. Exegesis of the Vinaya also says, it is better that they eat lumps of iron blazing with tongues of fire than for those with slack or corrupt discipline to eat the armed food of the local people. This has been taught with regards to both corrupted discipline and slackness in training. Dromtomba's statement that the sin of engaging in the 10 non-virtues is very small when compared to the sin of having broken one's reliance on the Dharma appears to be true.
Hong Kong ki dengi ki jami ki tawajiresa ana Hong Kong la chodo ji kol chushi de ko nga tiwa kol dindi tiwa ji tang dosa anzu dombal len cho dos dombal len ba ina digba mang sa dos tili dombal me ni gewa druna kevsan che yo sa ko keje ti tik dosa khar lab gore las dombal len chi ti tola ya da ji des ji thamandi wa chomba na digban dablok mambuchagres ta sonyora da ku tel deni ti chok chik bol den ta dombalan cho mundu samsam de thoba ji pe sayo sares ro din di thiwa ji thi song singala
Yami tawa kelan cheo yamna kan trouble.
koran trouble ti jo thiwa de ngal so tang song.
Oh. There was a question that was passed on to Geshe that came from a Chinese monk in Hong Kong. So he said that kind of, when you look at this presentation of karma, what make karma great in terms of the support, it seems that it almost implied that there is no use to taking vows, because if you're going to take a vow and you're going to commit a negativity, the negativity will become so much more greater if you're going to have a vow. So wouldn't it be just better not to take upon yourself a vow and just do your best cultivating virtue as a lay person? So it could happen that if you read through a section like that, you're going to think it actually means that it's not quite right to take a vow, or it doesn't work well, because if something just slight that is not conducive to the vow occurs, it becomes a massive negativity. So wouldn't it be better off not to do it in the first place?
Di chokchik mado ta mantong wi kyen sorochi rangi samna chokchik mado mantong wi kyen rochi dombalang ne dombat chi yebi tene lebi chakardo domba meba dan domba yoba nila ya lebi chak tone keba kazus drogdo 아니 밀릭 비차가 돈 개바고 니까 지 동바이나 니까 지 동바이나 아니 동바 여버디 아니 담만보게 딱 개선 채워 여버디 베시우리스 라 가우칼라당 안조지 레 탐보와 아니 지 샘레야 차당 몬송 여댕이 지기 아니 동발라인니 자원니 다지 니베 마크바 지 로세야다 카부로스 리티 이나야 아니 갑데 툴레야 뜨니 지 아니 샤담 지기 로바이나 아니 동바 메바다 여비토니 예바티 쇼바이나야 아니 지 샤담 지기래야 아니 게와드는 로바이나 베디 아니 남다 사기 케바쇼도 거레스 어 딘디기 상담바이나 아니 동발람비 거든 동바 수술이 수술 동발람비 까와총와들이야 나 까와 상부 총 삼비기 따지 가와 빡도 메바 공야 딘디 다 용구여러 왔어 다 딘디지 만통바이나 다 좀 당에 디버 마사로서 차도 다 딜리드 동바 메네 약서 삼나 다디 상로 데페 마스바티 냥가 로치 레샤스로
So then if you think that it's better not to take a vow because there is a danger that something slight might be incurred in relation to your vow, and then it's going to be a great negativity, this way of thinking is only one-sided. Now you're looking at it only from one perspective. You're looking at it from a negative perspective. Whereas if you think about it also from a positive perspective, like for example, if I'm going to take upon myself a vow, what benefit do I get from that? What is the positive aspect of taking upon myself a vow? How great that positive aspect can become if I do take upon myself this vow. So in that way, you're comparing both the negative sides and the positive sides. And when you do that, Geshe reckons that you will see that the positivity far outweighs the negativity. So it's much better to take upon yourself vows rather than to think that I better not take it because there's a danger that I won't be able to keep it right, or that there's something slight that will be incurred and thereby it will become a great fault. And also we need to take into consideration that since we are governed by anger and attachment, it's going to be very hard to make sure that we are not sullied by any infractions. So long as you are still governed by anger and attachment, there will still be ways in which you're going to false some of the vows that you have. But then if you make efforts to at least to try not to incur those faults, and you also apply practices of purification, so daily you purify whatever faults you have incurred in relation to your vow, then it's much better to have a vow in this scenario than to not have taken the vow at all. In that sense, you can say that there's such a great difference between them. It's just as different as the earth and the sky. So it's much better to, in that sense, to take upon yourself the vow if you think that, of course, it's going to be difficult, but it's going to be still a lot of benefit from that. So I will try my best. I will also purify whatever faults I incur with respect to the vow. I'm so lucky for being able to take upon myself this vow, and you feel very joyous, very happy for that. If you don't think about it like that, then of course there is a danger that if you don't think about it like that, then there's a danger in which you think that vows do not have any use whatsoever. It's better not to take vows. It's quite a dangerous way of thinking.
데레다지 동바촌이 맹인지기 가르쳐봐 있느냐 장부 약부 가르쳐봐 있느냐 비기기 약부 배러왔다 약부로 와서 있느냐 배나다 지 온도 하다미기 공방 토야기다 귤 로초고 지레스 마도 타타비기 타바토비 귤 타비기 지 타바토비 귤 게비 파차치 샤그레스라나 백하버랜도스라 아주 지금 소다리 얘기를 써봐. 아니 잔주 삼바 상가도 좀 딘디 지기 domba kaya rongwa jiki, rwa. Kanji kimbi domba ni chini, sanga ki domba bagi, tindiki domba kaya rongwa jiki, shiden machi ba, ani tarwa tubi gyun roya ki gewa chik sawa nini, saga misi wa resi, rwa. Domba leni, pena domba leni ta nima chigma do son tu men wa ina ya domba lani domba tobi getsa di tawi gyula ya drongi shi bajires ti domba mengi jigi kawa ni kawa pardo chik trambu tanje yabu chin droba ina ya getsa di sa tu mares ti di chik sam da wa ina ani domba lambi penyu di sam gi mekya bajires ya sira domba son matu wa ina ya domba lembi getsa di 아니 소수결이야 바사디 소수결이야 니치나 데그레스 라 데그레스 디 아니 개원이 개와 균이 아니 샘구딜이야 바사디 데그레스 다 델이야 켄체 온디 데니 야르야 로야기다 제바페 쳔부 다 딘티 게베 바사지 메바이나 데니 칼카부 슈지 라 최존 섬다마이나 베 칼카부 레샤스
And then when we consider the other option, not taking any vows whatsoever. So you can still act in a really positive way. You can be honest as much as you can. Of course, this is good. And also being honest, behaving in a positive way is creating causes for a high status rebirth as a human being or as a god. But still, when we consider the long-term goal, which is the attainment of the state of liberation, without taking vows, it is really hard, very hard to create causes for liberation. So we have different sets of vows. We have 7 or 8 classes of vows within the Pratimoksha level, the level of the vows of personal liberation. Then we have other sets of vows all the way up to the tantric vow. So without taking any of these vows, either beginning from the Pratimoksha level all the way up to the tantric vow, without taking any of them, it would be impossible to create virtues for the attainment of the state of liberation. Whereas when we take upon ourselves a vow, when we attend this vow, we are creating a cause for the attainment of the state of liberation, without which you might be practicing for such a long time, from life after life after life after life, but still it'd be very difficult to create causes for the attainment of liberation. So even if you think that I cannot keep my vows completely or purely, even if you think that I cannot keep them well, at least when you take a vow, you place an imprint upon your mind stream, and those such imprints remain with you from life after life after life over a succession of lifetimes. So there is a hope for us for making a progress, for improving, without which it would be so difficult to maintain that continuity that will result at the end at the state of liberation.
Lamrim namliyarda pena nambi trilaya tsubalaya namba chabalaya inchi minchi kyamru gogre sudas ra kyamru domba ta kyamru zamji genyen segorta tinji domba mantalaya tinji mebayna ani chi nambi trilaya zawani ta tsu marsayadi di ani yenji cheja geja marsu nguyo nesu ko toni bigita chi rodan ji toni ani rogoras dina ti damazon nanolaya le tugumdos 아니 라바 좀 시원이야. 저 수중 라바지 메나 라바 신이 이야기 땡코라 이지코라 라드야지. 디송도 왔어. 딘자 지기 더 dombal랜드 용엔다. 두주 아니 바자 캬바 진질 때니 연구 여바디 자지자다 뭐 시우레스. 디피게 아니 주교니 탈침바 캬바디 아니 소수기 서버당, 종주당, 셰럽당, 아니 직접 아니 개비신이 아니 추적 포모 다 딘디만 보고 질래야 땡기어로 와서라다디.
저는 그런데 캔좀메나 넘버 첼로 소리 말했어야지. 그런데라 개인 dombal라게르베.
캠주 domba. 캠주 쌈지 개인스. 개인 비생이보다 샤고스 말이.
저희네디 람리란 닌 답안에 캠수 조와이나 넘버
캠주 켈링 거스나라.
라.
캠주 켈링 바디.
저희네
담자디.
이네 domba된데 랭고르베.
제 담자디라다. dombal레니 인지미 비치 젠더로 제주 제고면다. 담자지야디.
So then when you look at it from the presentation or from the point of view of the presentation of the Lamrim, the Steps of the Path to Enlightenment, then to become Buddhist, you need to go for refuge. And you go for refuge through, you could say, making a vow or making a commitment to go for refuge for the rest of your life, without which you are not considered, you're not regarded as Buddhist, in a sense that you do not become Buddhist. So this is, you could say, the dividing line between Buddhist and non-Buddhist, going for refuge. So that being the case, then first of all, you recognize that making that promise or that commitment to go for refuge is what makes you Buddhist. But also, on top of that, when you look at having to guard ethical discipline in relation to yourself, being ethics, the training in in yourself being Buddhist, the training in ethics acts as a foundation for the two other trainings, concentration and wisdom, without the training in ethics, you will not have the base for the other training. So therefore, when you consider your progression as Buddhist, then you think that, first of all, to become Buddhist, I'm going for refuge, and I'm going for refuge in terms of at least making a commitment to go for refuge from this time on and for the rest of my life. This is to say, until my death. And of course, I need to train in ethical discipline. And in order to train in ethical discipline, then there are certain things that I need to do. I need to bear with difficulties. And also there are other things that I relate to or that I depend upon, like my friends, my Dharma friends, people in my community, and so forth. All those different things can be used as aids for keeping up with the training. Sambagone, mare sambagone mare.
Simjen la jimba tongwa la chuji jimba tang, sangi choba la sangi la choba la dribi choba nis, sansangi jimba tan choba li chipur chonde, ti zone shen shibar chawos. Tadia and ngobom teng yug chani, any keban rodanchi, ra. Chidan simjen nyam tabala ya, jimba tang ya dan, o duso, any Gewal lab chain race, Rochanju Simbi Chobarot, Gewal lab chain race. The Dini le Jig Sangila Chobapoyati, Ro Sangila Chobapoyati, and Telijan and the Caber to Power race. Or this one that the cousin the Red Roach, the younger Tobaro.
So we've covered the second point in the explanation of what makes certain karma great. That was a presentation of great strength by way of the support. Let's look at the third point, which is great strength by way of the thing. In the case of giving gifts to sentient beings, giving the Dharma is supreme. In the case of making offerings to the Buddhas, offerings one practice is supreme. Each being far superior to gifts and offerings of material things. Isn't this, as an example, understanding to apply in other cases? So this is something that we need to think about. Why is it that, for example, amongst giving, the giving of Dharma is regarded as supreme? Why is it that in making offerings to the Buddha, which we consider is important, the offering of one's practice becomes supreme? We have to think about these points.
Benedita Sungors, Bandin Dawatabe, Omanjubi, Toma Choba Jondi, and 7 inch Chamberlain, Choba Joris. 7 inch Chamberlain, Choba Javaina, and tell it then 7 inch Chamber Yams Lambal, then Gombi, and Chanju Samba, and Sunny Samba Chambo, and Sanji Tamjelaya, and Choba Joya, in Dogres. Tinza, Niji Chamberlain, Choba Javains, or to Sonyoris.
So, for example, in Chandrakirti's supplement to the Milway at the beginning, in the verses of paying homage, Chandrakirti pays homage to compassionate love. There is compassionate care for others. So when you think of why Chandrakirti begins with paying homage to compassion, well, when you pay homage to compassion, you are paying homage to the practice of bodhicitta. which means that you're paying homage to bodhisattvas. You're paying homage to those bodhisattvas who abide on the ground, the great grounds. You're paying homage to those who progress towards the state of enlightenment.
아니 상계디 아니 잔주샘비기 람냠슬렘발레 때니 상계 용고거라스 라 잔주샘비기 람냠슬렘도 조 아니 잔주샘바 차야디 아니 닌지 삼발레 때니 아니 잔주샘바 차고면서 아니 닌지레 때니 디탐지 루구여 봐서 아니 규 닌지레 쳐버주비 아니 제버 상계레 쳐버줘바디 땡긴 루브루를 소마 난신기 심전 탐지 상계 살아야 아니 용투야 심전 탐지기 즉 라나메비 데기디 상길에 되는 조고연자 아니 상길에 쳐버줘봐나 아니 다 딜리 랍체 딜리 쳐도 교지 용금에완자 상길에 쳐버줘야디 쳐버피야디 아니 쳐비난 것다 풀도 종아리스 어딘지 상당고 가서레스라.
So when you think about it, to become Buddha is dependent upon your practice of the path of bodhisattvas. Buddhahood depends upon the practice of the bodhisattva path, which in turn depends upon the practice of compassion. So then when Chandrakirti begins his supplement to the middle way by praising compassion, he praises the cause for the state of Buddha. So by praising the cause, you could say that you end up also praising the result, which is the state of Buddhahood. So then in terms of making such offerings here, since a goal is to lead all sentient beings to the state of Buddha, to provide all sentient beings with happiness and well-being, then when you put that into practice, there is no higher offerings. There is no offering that is more supreme than the offering of such practice.
대당한서 상길에 쳐버피 상길에 쳐버 가르지 피우고 그랬어. 상길 지금도 하듯이. 라 당한서 고송투들은 쳐버피고 갈다. 상길에 쳐버피가 로지 쏘고 그랬어. 당한서 고송투든 슬라원디 비 도고 쇠자 싱그 쇠자 짜 쇠자 고송투디 다가나야 가서다 뒤시 다가란 샤니 쳐버피와이나 상길에 쳐버피와디 로야 카고 베로스라. 비 엔다지 도다 신다 자고 쇠자비기 아니 군다 다가라는 뒤시샤지 되는 데니야 피야디야 멘다디야 아니 지비 자다 도소르 도르소르 짱짱 멘다늘로 샤샤샤지 피와이나라 산길을 줘비endre 백하버레스 된 말아서라.
So then when we make offerings to representations of body, speech, and mind, in the sense that we make offerings to statues and stupas and so forth. When we make such offerings, we need to look at our mental attitude. So often those statues, stupas, and such as representation of body, speech, and mind are made of stone or wood or iron and so forth. And when we make offerings to them, if we think of making offerings to just those things that are made of wood, iron, metal, and so forth, this is not the way that we should think about it. That's not the correct attitude. Also, we might be making mandala offerings in front of those, representations. So we make mandala offering. The mandala set is normally made of metal. Then you might be using stone, and you kind of cast your stones on the mandala set. It makes a lot of noise. So if your mental attitude is such that you think that all those different things are just the things that are made of wood and stones and metal, the Buddha is metal or stone and so forth, are making it to this statue, it's likely that this type of attitude is not going to constitute an actual offering.
아니 산통 롱에 시바기다 드리 야부 텐디 자마스 디기 멘다퓨즈 지거레스 디 수수 사고는 살로그라스다 지 도소르지 텐디 간간지 비기다 지우 야고 말 가디는 냐디 초르 삼송 상로소르 따니 디체바나 야시 야담바 딘동 주로지레샤스로 양코 지 규제 야부 텐디 에네 른단젠 텐디 죽체 디 코 비구여바냐 네 로가 인기레스 이나야 약슈디 아니 저버피에 약슈디 다 람람나 송고다 소수그 살롱이 시버지 비기다 처비리 망부여 조 아니 지 샤지리 쳐봐 셰라 피약 처비리디 되니 만달라야 지 소수 산통 롱이 시비기 아니 제지 피고 그레스 뭐 디송고도 왔으라
Now, in making such offerings, like for example, making a mandala offering, it might be that you don't have things to offer. Well, if you don't have things to offer, that's that's the way it is. You don't have them. But if you have things that you could offer and you can use them for the mandala set, then you do it. Now, in terms of what is good to use in a mandala offering, Geshe has seen here kind of some people using stone, and it becomes quite a noisy offering, right? Now you throw the stones in the mandala set, it's really noisy. It's best to offer good grains like rice or other type of grain. It's good to offer grains in the sense that those things are also things that you change from time to time. So if you think to yourself that it's either in a practical way, it's much better to use stones and such because I don't have to replace that, to change that as often as I change rice and so forth. Again, it's not a good attitude. If you think about it, just I'm making this offering just because it's practical to do it. It's not a good way to think of offering. So it's best to offer things that you eat, for example. So if you're using grain, rice and such in making mandala offerings, then you think about it as also making offerings of things which are offered to the mouth of the Buddha. Now we make those kind of different offerings to the senses. So making offerings of foods and drinks and so forth. It's a good way of thinking of making offerings.
다시반의 rumbuji 폼볼레 동숨지 심장 탐제라 수수네 상기기 최대를 좀 젤라 대라야 까와 찬염도 띵딘도 잡아 탐지기 띵딘도 제발이 장성기 탐지기 샘다 마드레 매도 직선 도로 소는 마와 손디스 대신도 토비자 총면다 랑신기 된라 미고서 삼비 캐버다 대야 슈 자신도 유른통 소지권 시버자오스
Now let's look at the fourth point in this explanation, which explains the great strength by way of the attitude. The Hip of Jewel Sutra says that if all the sentient beings of the billion universes out of aspiration for self-liberation were each to create Buddha's stupa as massive as Mount Meru, and if all those who are objects of respect were to pay respect to them for 10 million eons, this would not match the merit generated by a bodhisattva who, never separated from the mind aspiring for omniscience, offers one single flower. Likewise, a difference in attitude, such as aspiring for a higher or lower goal, or focusing on one's own or others' purpose, should be understood also in terms of greater or lesser intensity and longer or shorter duration.
테레샤다 예절라 양스 니문비 삼바 슉 타바다 균정와 톱첼라티 나네장 콘로 톱체데스 존줄리 까바톤 사바에 진드 데지첼로 솔리제 간 콘로지긴 점바지 제 송소스.
When it comes to faulty conduct and intense afflicted attitude and long duration also have greater strength. Also amongst the mental afflictions, anger is particularly strong. Entering the Bodhisattva way says, whatever good conduct has been amassed over 1,000 eons by giving and worshipping those gone to bliss and so on, is all destroyed by one moment of anger.
다들이 다치단 콩조싱인디 독자시우치 다 이어와서 콩조 독자시우치 콩조 독자 난기다 독시우 콩조디 콩조 사사기 육을 터냈더니 아니 개발제로야 라 잔주 샘발이야다 지 콩조사에디 아니 엘레 딕바치지 요마레스 간스는 잔주 샘바디 다가스 소소 미지기 메세 로단에 상단 데딩이지 제거 말았어 심전 탐지기 대된디 베 아니 쿠르드 시에치니 심전 탐지기 되든래야 전 슈딩인기 아니 미직 차고야 반자 강사지 차고야 반자 다 델은 내바이나 델은 내바이나 심전 탐지래야 다 아니 내바딘 로그도 왔어 봐 딘디기 전다 심전 탐지를 내바치바다 미직을 내바치니 상담은 심전 탐지를 내바치바디 아니 다 누가 임바디 다 야자 야다 말아 딘디 돈 드원디 chanju sambala ya kontro sayadi kontro nangita dukshuti ro kawa mambuta gewati ge ani chom progress o dindi sungu dos.
Here, Shantideva in his Gato Bodhisattva of life says that whatever good conduct has been amassed over 1,000 eons by giving and worshipping those gone to bliss and so on is all destroyed by one moment of anger. So anger is considered to be of the worst states of mind. And when you look at the object of anger, anger can be directed to different things, but the worst is getting angry with a bodhisattva. There is no bigger or worse situation than getting angry at a bodhisattva. And the explanation for that begins with, first of all, recognizing that a bodhisattva is someone who is not just concerned about their welfare for this lifetime. The concern is for the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. They're taking upon themselves the burden of all the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. And therefore, since their goal, their burden is the welfare of all sentient beings, if you harm a bodhisattva, you're thereby harming all sentient beings. So if you think of harming all sentient being versus harming just one individual, of course, the negativity in harming all living beings would be far greater than harming just one single being. So then here, what Shantideva is saying that when you think of someone that is intent on the welfare of all living beings, the happiness and the welfare of all living beings, if you harm that person, if you get angry with that person, a bodhisattva, there is no greater negativity.
안들어다 간지다 콘로 디녀바 친구 쇼치 쓰기도스라 녀바 친구 쇼치 쓰면서 안 뒤견딩게 콘드리 녀미 때 삼친 당한주 콘드로 마기야기 탑시다 제거되네야 까야 깔하고 쇼도스라 콘드디 람상 베나가로 있는 콘드 람상 기대행으로지 학도도 직 소수 녀살이야 타 녀살이야 엔 콘드 아니 기하고 그거 마음으로 어딘지로 자기도스디 제 어딘지로 진짜 견댕기 다치 콘드리 녀미 삼투바나 아니 콘드로 기하기 비다치 갑 레비 갑들이야 까 투야지 삼로 땅 투야지 용사레스 마도 지 견댕기 콘드리 톨이야 삼로 지야 마단지 로데바이나 아니 콘드로 까고 존나 까깔 가고 빼러스라.
Anger is such a faulty state of mind. And yet, it's so easy for us to get angry. So we need to begin with thinking of the drawbacks of anger. It's so hard to put a stop to it because you encounter a situation and immediately anger arises. It arises not only so quickly, but also it often happens that anger arises towards the people around you, those who are close to you. So if you then start with, first of all, recognizing the drawbacks of anger, thinking of the drawbacks of anger, you will then find opportunities for putting a stop to anger. Whereas if you don't think at all about how anger is a disadvantageous state of mind, that anger is a drawback, it would be very hard to put a stop to anger.
There is the thing in the Java dog ma long down there, and it be Taran Resro, Chigla Chigan Nusum Chenan, tell Tsultrim to be Kyomuni, some them Medio, Gonitio Menu, Jimmy Medio, Sanji Chovimin, she sauce.
We continue with the King of Concentration Sutra, which says the same thing. If someone harbors harmful intent for another, ethical conduct or studying cannot protect him, nor can meditative concentration or solitude, nor generosity or worshipping the Buddha.
re daji big daji control sasa yul chik sorojre chik pen chanju samba chikla ya ani control ta nesum kebaina ta di tashi ki an chik Tsultrim sonya soba gomya samden gomya big empatya jimba tanya sankele cheba kar cheba na ta digi ani nyebati thaya ta khabures ro ani kan kondusa se yu tela tembige ani shagdan mache bar ani chanju sambala yu kondus seche ani sujola ya sujo ta ji ani jeso phashin tuksenam da di karigi chedeba na ya ani nyebat thagmardas di tindiro songodas ro.
So then here we still speak about anger. So anger is a negative state of mind, and particularly become negative with respect to the object. So becoming angry at a bodhisattva, developing malice with respect to a bodhisattva. It's very difficult for something like that to be purified. Even if you practice ethics and patience, absorption, you remain in solitude, you're making offerings, you're practicing generosity and so forth. It's so difficult to purify anger generated towards a bodhisattva. If you are going to purify the negativity of getting angry at the bodhisattva, it needs to be done in relation to that bodhisattva. Whereas, let's say that you have gotten angry at the bodhisattva and you practice other things with the people around you. So you might then be angry with one bodhisattva, but patient with those next to you. You might be practicing generosity with them, you're giving to them and so forth. And still, even if you do that, it is difficult to purify the negativity of getting angry with a bodhisattva. It needs to be done with respect to them. Otherwise, it will not become purified.
Jikal teni nyeba sayo na tela teni ani nyeba doctor chigundas sula dugja chebana tela pa ani gonda labgo nanta tela pa ani chi zosur chigwana di chere mado changi be dugja chesa di suzu dungu metelia di che ani gablo ola pa korni me shamba chela gonda labaina di tagmaros ro di nyeba tagmar di chigba
So whatever negative action you have done, you've done it in relation to a particular base. And when you apologize for that, when you ask forgiveness, you need to ask forgiveness from them. Otherwise, if you don't do it in this way, it will be hard to think that you can really purify your negative action. So suppose that you have harmed someone in front of you, but you apologize to the person standing behind you. Is it really going to work? It's not going to work, is it? If you don't ask forgiveness, if you don't apologize for harming that person, if you apologize to another person, it's not really going to purify the negativity that you have done.
Lamrim ani chenyi chigore lamrim gongore lamrim de tebachimbi chure dos tebachimbi chu zawad chanju semda ta ninji said ro chanju semda ninji zawad ta gyunde menga dun la sobo mashi la sobo be kechembu shuchen ta lamrim nanola ya ani gyunde menga dun de be kechembu chi sonyora dinang ta mashi zawad rochi tenza ta pena sen dige susu ngone tanige ngus lu de jingenge sen dige phamadi name soruji tanche ani chi shambajile ya chi simjan tamji chi gongu yus lab debana di yaja jatama pendo yongenge ani nyamlen chi tsawnin rogmaros da di soruji ro begi tsawa korani jun rogoya chi ani nyamlen sedi tirendos da chi gogor tansa roji da yusa roji tsawnin da mundus yo mares ro.
So we study and teach the Lamrim here. And as such, the Lamrim is a Mahayana Dharma. Since it is a Mahayana Dharma, it is emphasizing the practice of the mind of enlightenment, the development of bodhicitta, which is rooted in compassion. And in order to put it into practice, we use the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions. We begin with the first step of recognizing all sentient beings as having been amadas. This is so important. The first step, recognizing all sentient beings as having been amada, is crucial for the development of bodhicitta in the sevenfold cause and effect personal instructions. So then if we think of the relationship that we have with a mother in this life, if we ignore her, the one that gave us our body, if we completely ignore her and then think that I'm really practicing bodhicitta here, I'm helping other living beings, it's not going to be a real practice. We need to really make sure that we start from the first step, from the very root of practicing bodhicitta, which is recognizing mothers, recognizing a mother in this life, but also recognizing sentient beings as having been mothers. This set of instruction is not a deceitful set of instruction. It's not creating kind of a misleading, it's not creating a fake presentation. This is an authentic presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Shannon is asking, if I'm sincerely sorry for negative actions I've done and apologize to those that I have wronged, if they don't forgive me, will it be purified? 다 셴라 gonda shewa inarwa. 다 Quran 셴라 nubachi chewa ina. 아니 gonda shewa ina. 닌 타고는 gonda shewa ina. 아니 소소니에바 된데 켈레와 인arwa. 콘소 다랑 kunzin 야네 로 타마 투와이나. 소소 gonda 켈 말렘바 된데 차기로와. Quando di kemalewaina sozo di pa tayon sigirves tayon sigmares tagirve tagimares.
The pendo yoba di jasijada ma redo asra. Anzuki chikta chik sosu non chushawa yabana. Metele ya chik. Semni da jigma song samde da kani midi domdin da gwanda silawaina. Sosu semna leshik shirochi. 안든을 설거지라 미디 동 코랑 때니 gondas 라와이나 아니 매말 헬레로지 책임이 됐어 근데 책을 싸우고도스라 디 가르쳐 가르된 걸 쓰라는데 아니 네가 다기 예비기 빵다서로 책을 했어 그 봐서 미 킬레 만나서지 디 간줄이야 디어 말았어 가르쳐다 라완 소리 요 말았어
Well, you recognize that you've done something wrong and you apologize for that. And Geshe feels that when you're standing in front of the person that you're wrong, and you not only think that it was wrong, but you also state that you apologize for that, it makes your mind easier, more at ease, make your mind more peaceful. We can say that this is one sign of purification. So whether or not the other person is accepting your apology, that's another matter. But to begin with, you can say that, no, and also Geshe said that actually we don't have control over those issues, right? So you might apologize sincerely and the other person does not accept your apology. It's not in your hand. You don't have much power in that. But then at least in terms of being sincere about it, if you're being sincere about it and you're stating that, it does make you feel much lighter, much easier. And this is a sign of purification. Shall we leave it here for now? Let's do the final Lamrim dedication. For my two collections, vast space that I've amassed from working with effort for a great length of time. Sorry. I was trying to outsmart myself. All right. All right. For my two collections past its space that I've amassed from working with effort, this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds, wisdom eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded parts of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means, strong by the strong force of compassion. May I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path that is ascended. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time, with my heart going up with great compassion. In whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and may the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by even this graded path of enlightenment, completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all humans and non-human beings eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing excellent paths, never departed in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes an effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.